Hello there, Pursuing Freedom friends. Thanks for being with us today. I am very excited to introduce you to Gwen Daubenmeyer, who I've been chasing down to come on the show and share her story because Gwen is a huge heart. She's been in the business for over 30 years. She runs a successful team. She's still helping clients. She is an incredible business owner, businesswoman, soul sister, coach, teacher, mentor, and everything in between. And she's got a great story for us. And I think you're going to leave here inspired to take the wheel of your own life and business and create a business that matches you, your personality, your gifts, and supports you on creating the life you don't need a vacation from. So with no further ado, Gwen, if you could tell us a little bit about your story and your background in the industry, and we'll just kind of dive in from there. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Erin. So fun. Well, my story begins in 1985 when most people weren't born yet. And there wasn't really like an MLS, and we had all of this crazy books and didn't even have pagers yet. And it's so funny because I was in my 20s and I got into real estate back then because I wanted to create my own hours, right? Which didn't happen then and it doesn't happen now, but I fell for that as well. And then going through the years, I just really love real estate. Like I can't imagine doing anything else, even in the hard times. And then I was in business for probably 15 or 16 years. And my husband then, his engineering company was bought out, and he came home with a cardboard box one day. 6 months into our brand new dream house purchase.
Oh man.
So yeah, it was, that was an interesting time. And so then I said, well, why don't you join me until you figure out what you want to do? And then I had to get serious about real estate because prior to that, he had been an engineer and I made decent money in real estate, but I basically did as much as I wanted to. But when he came home and there was no more engineering salary coming in, I was like, okay, holy crap, this just got really real. And so I began in earnest, like really building a career and building a business. And he never left. He's been with me ever since. And in the bubble, we had oh my gosh, like the worst time ever. We thought we were really prepared financially. We saved, we did everything right, and nearly lost our business, our house, we were in the thick of it with everybody else. We're right outside Detroit. Our area was hit really badly. And so we learned a ton about that. Finances, how to really structure a business. And we built a very small team. We have 3 agents and 3 staff right now. We close, depending on the market, we close anywhere between, I don't know, maybe 90 and 125 or 30 deals a year. I haven't really had any interest in growing my team. Just the 3 of us were like a happy family all snuggled in together. And it's worked out really well, but we've learned so much since the bubble. And I think one of the most encouraging things is although I've loved real estate most of my life, my very best years began at year 25. So
Interesting. What happened then?
I began to understand what team building was like. I began to reach out to mentors instead of just being a solo racehorse with blinders on. And I began to learn how other people were doing things and began to learn how to really properly manage money. And I didn't really know what my numbers were because we just always made the money and we just always spent the money and we just always saved the money, but I didn't have a P&L every month that I looked at and things like that. So we struggled because we weren't watching our numbers. And so I thought, wow, that was a bad quarter. And then the next, wow, that was a bad quarter. And then the next thing you know, we had a really bad year and couldn't pay our IRS estimate, right? Because I used to just take a check or two and throw them there at the quarter. Well, there were no checks coming in. So that was like a really big eye opener. So we've fallen so hard and recovered. And we're very transparent about it because you should talk about these things that you learn.
Actually, it's funny because I had already written down when you said been through the hard times in the business. And then you said, when your husband lost his job and you had to really rethink things. And that was an interesting time. And I wrote down failing and fear because I was just talking to someone yesterday about this on another podcast about when the longer you're in the industry, the more probability and likelihood that you're going to experience hard times, interesting times, and some failure and some falling down. And I was curious to ask you, how has that shaped you as we're recording this in essentially at the end of month 3 of the COVID pandemic? And how has that shaped your ability to navigate unexpected hardships, if you will, like what we're experiencing, what we've just gone through, what we're going to continue to go through, the unknown and all the fear and all that kind of stuff?
Oh my goodness. I think it would have been hard for things to get much worse back in 2010, and we made it. So that is the gift of a really hard time, is the confidence that comes from another hard time, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important when you do have a hard time to be really transparent and not judgmental, but just out of curiosity. Like Roger and I looked at each other and said, okay, we didn't do that well. How are we going to change things so if it happens again, we're going to be in a different situation? And so we sought coaches to teach us how to do short sales. We sought coaches who would teach us how to read a P&L. I mean, you can do it in software, but if you don't understand what it's saying, what difference does it make? It may help to know that Roger and I got married 6 weeks after we graduated from high school.
That's so cool. I forgot I saw that on Facebook and I was like, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me. That's amazing. I was like 14, he was 15, and then we just thought it would be a good idea because it was the 70s and, we'll live on love. So we did get married and we didn't go to college. So I missed that whole, this is your MBA. So we sort of got an MBA in envelopes during 2010. We learned a whole lot about that. So then we had to go back and catch up and really learn business, which we did. So we are very avid believers in educating and reading. It was funny. I was on a panel with my company a couple of weeks ago, and they were asking me about what books have been, instrumental in, bringing us, because really my favorite time has only been the last 10 years. Out of all of my 30, it's been the most fun, the most successful, after my 25th year. And he said, well, what do you tell people that don't like to read? And I just stopped for a minute and I said, that's irrelevant. Who said you have to like to read to educate yourself? That was a new concept to me. It's no, if you don't know something, you must go read it. So yeah, this thing about reading educational books because you enjoy reading is not the purpose. You're getting an education there. So just buckle up and figure it out and read what you need to read. And that's what we did. Well, I was having a conversation recently with someone talking about, I think it was a similar thing. I was teaching a class and somebody asked about, hiring help and hiring an assistant. And my perspective on it, when I look back to all the years of being a solopreneur and sucking it up when I'm trying to grow my business and sucking it up when I'm at the top and surviving and getting through these great months. And why did it feel so unfun, right? You talked about the last 10 years being the most fun and your favorite time. And I would say the same about my business, probably starting when I brought on my first team member 6 years ago. And I was saying, I think that you need to plan to run your business like a business and realize that you're not gifted at all things. The joy in building a successful business comes from knowing what your gifts are and operating in that zone of genius and surrounding yourself with people that like to do the things you don't like to do so that you can have fun in the process. And, she was talking about, well, when can I afford that or whatever? And I was saying that when you talked about the MBA just now, that was our MBA, was learning all this stuff. And I think back to the struggle of going into credit card debt and muscling my way through and failing forward and all this stuff and realizing when I was starting to be hard on myself for my financial situation the debt, the feeling like a failure, and really judging myself for getting myself into a mess, if you will, like you just talked about, I talked to myself into like the alternative perspective was, well, this is my MBA. Like I didn't get an MBA. I thought about going to grad school and I didn't. So I would have probably gotten a bunch of student loans to get myself through my MBA. So invest in yourself as you would invest in your education. It's part of it. You can't wing it in this journey, in any journey in life. You should always be looking for guidance, right? One of the things I want to ask you about, because I think it's really interesting that you say that, year 25 and the last 10 years being your favorite time and the most fun. How much of that do you think is a result of getting clear on who you are, what your gifts are, and realizing that it's okay to let go of responsibilities, tasks, relationships, commitments that you don't feel are in alignment with who you are? Like, how much of it do you think is just knowing yourself and being okay with that?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. I think that there's two things happened. Number one was humility. Like I was in control of everything. I did everything. I did it well until I didn't. And then, I fell, and there was no one to blame it on. It was like, okay, this is what I did. So then that was actually helpful, because then it made me understand that I am not good at all things. I was just able to do all things, right? So then that led to, I remember sitting in Alex Sharfin's, one of his lead conferences, and we were talking about money. And I literally spent my last $1,000 to go to this conference to figure out how to do what I didn't know. And he said, well, you have to hire an assistant. And I said, well, I don't have any money for an assistant. We're eating 10 for 10, like 10 bean burritos for $10, or 10 for $1. And so he said, how much can you afford? And he asked me that question, like, how much could you eke out? And I ended up saying I could hire an assistant for $9 an hour for 4 hours a week. Like that was my budget. That's how low we had burned through our savings and already pulled some out of retirement. And that's all I could. He said, step into belief. So there's got to be somebody out there. So I just told my story on Facebook and said, listen, I need somebody for just 4 hours a week. Name your own 4. I can only pay $9 an hour, but if it works out, there'll be raises. I had like 5 applicants who wanted to work 4 hours a week. It's like something to do while the kids were in there or whatever. That assistant then ended up full-time in no time at all and going forward. And I was able to release, right? So I was able to release the things that I wasn't good at. So then that leveraging thing became like a quest for me. Like I started really, because the old message has been educate your weaknesses, like grow your weaknesses, right? Yeah. So, Alex had said, no, don't do that. That's not the way to do it. You leverage your weaknesses and you grow your strengths. And so I bought into that. I call pressing my I believe button, because I really didn't believe it. So you just have to take somebody's word for it, press the button and go, right? You don't have to wait till you believe it. Just do it and press the button and go. And that's where it started. Literally. $9 an hour, 4 hours a week was the beginning of my leverage lesson. And now we have 3 full-time staff, and we're able to keep them paid all through COVID full-time, because we have grown in that way. And we learned how to put a team together in the right way with their strengths and their profiles and that kind of thing. And we each love our job.
So this is so important for the listeners that I really want to drill down on this, because I want you to tell me what happened to your energy when you released 4 hours a week of things on your to-do list that you didn't like to do and weren't good at. Like, how did you feel energetically and emotionally as a result of releasing?
So I really want to say that I felt really good, but the truth is that it was a process. The first thing was, oh my gosh, I really that's part of my car insurance payment. So this better be worth it. The second thing was she's not going to do it like I do it.
Yeah.
The third thing was she's never been in real estate. She's going to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it was that process of, I don't know if this is going to work out, but I trusted people who were smarter than I am. And I trusted people who were more experienced than I was. And if I'm going to pay somebody to teach me how to do something, I'm going to be all in. I'm not going to fight them on it. If I'm going to fight them on it, either I need to step out or I need to find a different person. Like, that doesn't work. And so I just went all in. When I set that stuff down, which was my baggage, not hers, right? Those are my beliefs. When I set that down, I mean, I bet 4 hours lasted 2 weeks. And then it was 6 hours, because then I felt myself like my shoulders just releasing because she had her things to do. Then I was doing my lane, my money-making things, which I saw would have benefit to my entire situation, right? So it was that initial process of, holy crap, I don't know, what am I doing? I feel guilty, because I was in a pattern of feeling guilty, right? So we need to learn to set that down and recognize it and then move forward. And then the energy is amazing. Like, you're like, what else can you do? What else can I have sent assistants to Texas to learn from people. I'm just, what do you need? What tools do you need? And it's so freeing. That's why I have loved my job the last 10 years. I'm doing the parts I love.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And first of all, I want to say thank you for the candor of just how hard it is, because I never want to purport that hiring help when you're terrified, when you're financially not in a great place, when your confidence is low, I'm not ever going to suggest that that's easy. And so addressing the process of the fear of this person not doing as good as me, the fear of what if it doesn't work and I can't afford this person, all the fear is what holds people back and holds us stuck. And it's interesting. I was reading Free to Focus, which is an amazing book. And he talks about these like different zones where activities fall in your desire zone. That's what you're good at and what you enjoy. Things that fall in the disinterest zone are things that you're good at, but you don't necessarily enjoy. And then the distraction is I enjoy it, but I'm not good at it. Drudgery is I don't like it and I'm not good at it, right? And then in a perfect world, we're working towards spending 70 or 80% of our day in the desire zone. And he said in the book that the trouble with the disinterest zone in particular, I'm good at it, I'm capable, but I don't necessarily enjoy it, is that people can get stuck there for years, even decades, because they tell themselves it's what pays the bills. And I remember when I was at my financial rock bottom in the first year, my dad said to me, you do whatever it takes. And I thought that was great advice at the time, like do whatever it takes. And I think a lot of us get that advice, just suck it up, just muscle through. And we think we'll figure out getting an assistant far in the future because our belief system is still paralyzed by the fear of what if this doesn't work. We can't put ourselves in the belief system that someday we're going to need an assistant, because it's all about our beliefs, our fears, our thoughts. And it's like, when I think about that disinterest zone and being stuck there for decades, and you saying that like you were terrified in year 25 to outsource at a time that you were struggling. And then after you worked through that process, you've now found the greatest happiness and the greatest joy in your career. And that to me is like incredibly powerful and an amazing takeaway for anyone who's listening, that, to believe, even when you can't believe it, when it's the unimaginable, the unrealistic, the improbable, that perhaps it would be inevitable if you followed the advice of someone like Gwen, or you followed the advice of someone, the coaches you've had. I really love that. One thing I wanted to ask you about, because we were talking about this before we started recording, and we were talking about the fact that you're an introvert. And I think that a lot of people assume that when they see someone experiencing success in our industry, that they must have this special DNA that equates to success. And what I know I've learned in my journey is that there's a lot of diversity in this industry. and that the success, but more importantly, the fun that you're having, the joy that you're experiencing is the result of you being in alignment with who you are. So can you talk to us a little bit about that experience of knowing yourself as an introvert, and then what it looks like to translate who you are as being enough to having success coupled with joy, coupled with fun and a happy journey?
Sure. So again, like everything else, it's sort of a process. So early in my career, we didn't have access to real estate trainers like we do today, right? We had way back in the day, Floyd Wickman, Danielle Kennedy, Zig Ziglar, Tommy Hopkins, let's say. And you read books. If you were lucky, you caught them as they were traveling. And so it was sort of a one size fits all mindset. Like if you're going to make it in, and I didn't know this when I got into real estate, by the way, or I probably wouldn't have. True, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't know when you got into real estate that I was going to have to go door knocking, and I was going to have to pick, like, our training was literally, he tossed a Bresser's, actually it was before Bresser's, he tossed a phone book to us on Friday night and said, call till you get one. And I didn't know that I could leave. And we literally opened the phone book and we started calling people alphabetically in the phone book. I can't tell you how miserable I was.
It makes me want to cry.
I did cry several times because people were mean then too. Like they're just publicly mean now because of social media, but they were just as mean then. And so it was horrible. And then I remember making, flyers of my, my listing and standing outside of Holiday Market and, doing this in a weekday because we didn't have any other choices. And I did walk up and down streets and hand out, listings of a house that I just listed. So when somebody doesn't want to answer a phone call and some round robin, whatever, go do something else. Cause you don't even know what it used to be like. And so I felt like I was a failure most of the time because I didn't fit any of those molds. And it did take me a long time to get started. Like now you can be an instant success in a year, doing real estate. And I'm happy for those people. But I literally had to make the decision that, you know what, I'm not doing any of that stuff. And if that means I can't work for this broker, then I'm not going to work for this broker. And finally, somebody left me alone. And I was able to just work within my sphere, just being who I was, not waving my banner of real estate. And when people know, like, and trust you, then they call you. And then that led to the business that I have now, which is something like 88% past client referral and sphere of influence in the deals that we close, which have been, I don't know, the three of us as high as 130 or 40 something. I don't know. But we just make their experience exactly who we are, so that when they come to us, there's no surprises.
Yeah.
And then they don't leave.
I love it. Well, I'm laughing too, because when when I got into the industry, it was the same thing. It was like, okay, but as a lender, you're gonna walk into real estate offices with cookies and rate sheets. And I was like, nope, I'm not gonna be doing that. And if that's the only recipe for success, then I might as well quit right now, because that's never gonna happen. I was cringing inside. And it's interesting because earlier I forgot to tell you that I got the chills when you talked about how the old teaching used to say that you need to educate your weaknesses, and instead it's built on your strengths and leverage your weaknesses. And I mean, that really gave me the chills, because you think back to those early years when it's like, here's your prescription for success, just go do that. And and if that doesn't fit who you are and what your gifts are and what your strengths are and what you're passionate about, then how many people in our industry are feeling the same way we did when we started, where it's like, do what? No, I can't do that. Like, that's not who I am. It doesn't feel in alignment. It's not authentic. Therefore, nothing happens. And then nothing happens, So that's really fascinating. I want to honor your time today. And I mean, everything that you've shared is just so profound and honest. And I love that. I really just appreciate your candor and your willingness to share the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. And I love that now, or that, you're having the most fun that you've ever had. If you could think of just like one piece of advice for someone who's listening to this and feeling that like they're listening and they're like, that's me. I don't want to do that thing. I don't want to call expired. Like, what would be the one thing that you could suggest, maybe a book they could pick up to sort of find that opportunity to work on tapping into who you are and then building on your strengths as opposed to trying to push through your weaknesses
and crush it? Don't we all just want to crush it?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Oh
yeah,
God.
there's a couple of things that I'm passionate about. And we were talking, like I'm an avid reader. And I believe that everybody should be reading. It doesn't matter if you enjoy it or not. There's information that you need in order to do that. But for me, it wasn't necessarily one book, although I'll name a couple that were influential. For me, it was assessments. So that was my key to freedom. When I first had the DISC profile done and I did my own, I was like, oh, okay, that explains some things. And then I did the Strength Finder, and that was like, oh, all right, that explains a lot more. And then I understood that I was given permission to leverage those things that I wasn't good at and concentrate on the things that I was. And when I started to do that, it started to feel natural, and it started to fill me with wanting to get up and go to work and do those kinds of things. And then I learned about leveraging, which you hire people then who love to do those things. And it was hard for me to believe that people love you. The people are out there that love to do the things that I don't like to do. I'm like, I'm never going to find anybody that likes to do that. Yes, you will. And that's their passion. Yeah. So I had really good input for that. But the books, I think, other than the assessments, which were the DISC profile and the Strength Finder, The Go-Giver is a really great book. That's the center of who I am and what I do. I believe that every situation we encounter, every situation you encounter, you will leave a fingerprint one way or another. So watch how you touch it, because it will never be the same. I'm just really woo in that way. And the second thing is this book called Profit First. In Dave Ramsey's Debt Snowball. I mean, if it weren't for those two things, back then I was trying to keep one house. 10 years later, I have 5. 2 of them are free and clear. The other 3 are on their way. Money can release you, the proper management, not the amount, the proper management of it. I remember when I started, I was saving $8 out of each commission check, right? Just to get the habit, but it needed to go other places. So that's all I had. But just doing that and creating that different habit was so freeing that it allowed me the energy to pursue what I needed to pursue. Probably not at all what you asked me.
No, it's perfect. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I was taking notes, and I want everyone who's listening to know that if you're listening to this while you're driving or taking a walk or whatever, that the books that are recommended and everything will be in the show notes. And you can get access to the DISC personality profile test for free by Googling Tony Robbins DISC. And then you can take that test. And I would highly recommend read it in full, read all the description. And the other one is the Strength Finders by, is it Don Clifton, I think, is the author?
Yeah, Clifton. Mm-hmm.
And what an incredible book, especially if you are looking to build a team. But honestly, it's great if you're married and you want to just know how to appreciate the uniqueness of your spouse and their gifts. It's awesome. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I just appreciate you sharing those perspectives. So thank you, Gwen. I am so glad that you took the time to be on the show. I knew that you were going to bring a wealth of knowledge and inspiration. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. I love teaching. That is my lane first.
I love it. Good. And to all my Pursuing Freedom friends, thanks as always for tuning in. If you are enjoying this content, I would ask you, please wherever you're consuming it, please be sure to look for the little pencil and leave a review. It helps us continue to attract amazing guests like Gwen and help you get this great content to help you on your journey to building a life you don't need a vacation from. I love and appreciate you as always. Make it a great day.